Hey, it's Marley. Welcome to my booktube channel. Today we are going to be doing my May reading wrap-up. So before we get into the book reviews for all the books I read in the month of May, let's do a quick little overview of the books that I read and some stats, that kind of thing. First of all, I did read 8 books this month, which is a little bit less than I had planned, but this month was a little bit chaotic for certain reasons, so I'll give myself grace for that. The pages read ended up being 2,818, as I said, a little bit less than usual. My average rating was 3.875, so kind of just average. Books acquired was 10 and that actually happened recently in the last couple days. I bought quite a few books, so we are getting prepped for the spring summer book haul. In terms of genres, it's interesting because it's basically 50-50 between romance and fantasy. Normally I have a lot more genres than just 2, but I guess this month I just really stuck with the romance and fantasy. I did of course do that new romance reading vlog, so that explains that a little bit. In terms of format, I did read 5 physical books and 3 ebooks. And in terms of audience, I read mainly adult and only 1 YA book. For author gender, 75% female authors and 25% male. And then in terms of author status to me, whether I'd read from them before or not, again, 75% were repeat authors and only 25% were new to me authors. And then in terms of year published, we had 3 from 2024, so 3 new releases, which makes sense because of that new release reading blog I mentioned. We had 1 from 2023, 1 from 2022, 2 from 2020, and 1 from 2018. So yeah, now let's get into the book reviews. We're gonna start with my lowest rated book going up to my highest rated book. So actually my least favorite book I read this month was Bride by Ali Hazelwood, which is kind of a shocker. Ali Hazelwood is of course one of my favorite romance authors, but in case you didn't catch my romance reading vlog where I read this, there's basically just one main reason why I rated this lower. I'm sure you guys have already heard of Bride. It is like a paranormal romance book between a vampire and a werewolf, and I honestly really liked the setup. I really liked the world. We have our main character Misery, who is kind of used as leverage for the vampire community. She grew up amongst humans because her dad is like the head of the vampires, so they did like a swap for kind of having an alliance between the vampires and humans. So she lived with the humans and then a human lived with the vampires as a sign of goodwill kind of thing. And then once she's older, now her dad wants her to marry this werewolf to better the alliance between the vampires and werewolves, and she decides to do this for her own kind of ulterior reasons, and that is the romance. It is like a marriage of convenience, I guess forced proximity kind of trope for this romance. But honestly, one of the things that I loved the most about this book wasn't even the relationship between the two in the romance. It was just like Misery as the main character was a great main character. Ali Hazelwood's writing is so fun, like it always is. And there's so many like side characters and side like relationships and stuff that were really fun to read. And as I said, I also kind of liked the world. It wasn't super like high fantasy or anything like that. It was very much like urban fantasy, but it was very enjoyable. The main thing that I didn't like about this book was kind of the smut aspects of the book. And as people have been talking about the Omegaverse stuff, that was my first time reading about something to do with the Omegaverse, and it was a little bit shocking for me. It wasn't necessarily to my taste. So that is why this book ended up being rated lower than I would have rated it otherwise. But overall, I actually did quite like this book. I just had to lower the rating because of some of those elements. Next up, I don't have the physical books with me anymore because I borrowed them from a friend, but I did read volumes 2 and 3 of Hell's Paradise. This is by Yuji Kaku. As you guys know, I don't read a ton of manga, but this is one of the series that I have started and decided to continue with. So this is about a assassin, and he's a really, badass assassin, but he ends up getting captured along with a bunch of other like killers, and they all get placed on this island in this sort of competition to find immortality. And so it's this kind of like magical island. There's a lot of monsters, it's very dangerous, and our main character is trying to find this immortality and trying to kind of win this competition so he can go back to his wife or fiance or whatever. I gave these both 3.5 stars. The first book in the series. I did give a 4-star, but I don't know, like these ones were losing me a little bit. I still overall enjoyed them. I like the story and I like some of the characters, but it's very action based, and I find that with some of the art, it's a little bit hard to understand what's happening sometimes with the action, because obviously it's a manga, so it's like illustrations. So sometimes I get a little bit confused. Also, I feel like you can really tell this is written by a man because there's a lot of unnecessary nudity, especially with the female characters, which just kind of takes me out of it a lot of the time. It's like, I don't really think this is needed. Like, it's kind of weird. So yeah, so I think I'm going to continue with this series, but I'm definitely not enjoying it as much as the Full Metal Alchemist, which is the other manga series I'm currently working on. Then we have The Dead Romantics by Ashley Poston. This is her first adult romance. I did read one of her young adult books. I know she's been blowing up in the adult romance category now. This is a romance, but it also has some magical realism, which I think is fun that she included that. It's about a main character. She works in publishing. She can see ghosts. She randomly has this power where she can see ghosts, and then her father passes away, and so she's dealing with this grief. She goes back home to kind of be with her family during this time, and then her editor suddenly starts appearing to her. Her editor seems to have died, and so she's seeing him as like a ghost. And so that's the romance, is between her and her dead editor, who she's the only one that can see him. But it is so it's a romance, but it very much focuses on a lot of the other stuff, like the grief the main character is going with, her relationship with her family, some of her career stuff. And so I did overall enjoy this book. I gave it 4 stars. I would say it's probably a low 4-star. Like, maybe I could have rated it less, but I did think it was cute. I think it was funny. I appreciate any romance that has those other elements incorporated in and doesn't just only focus on the romance. I really like when there's some deeper like meanings and other things going on that the characters are dealing with. Sometimes I think it just focused a little bit too much on those other elements though in this particular case. So I don't think it will necessarily work for everyone, but it was overall a pretty cute, fun read for me. And I think I will keep reading her books. Next up, this would be a higher 4-star rating. We have Just for the Summer by Ali Jimenez. If you don't know, my history with Ali Jimenez is I've read, Part of Your World and Yours Truly, and loved those romances. And this was a great third and final book in her little companion series with those other books. So in this, we are following our 2 main characters who end up meeting over like Reddit, because they both have this weird curse where when they break up with someone, that person finds their person right after they break up with them. So all their exes just find their true love after dating them, basically. So they're like, why don't we date each other? So then the curses will like cross each other out, and we'll both find our person after we break up, if you know what I mean. The only thing is the girl is like a traveling nurse, so she doesn't live near him. So she has to like rearrange her work schedule to come like work in his town for the next like, I think it's only for like a month or a few months. So they have like a limited amount of time to be dating. This book took me maybe a little bit to get into it. I was kind of confused on like what the connection was between the other books in the series. I wasn't totally sold on the romance because I was like, I don't know how this is going to work between the 2 of them with their different lives and their different situations they have going on. As with Ali Jimenez's other books, there is some kind of heavy emotional stuff both characters are going through, which I don't want to spoil, but they both have, well, the girl has some trauma to work through. The guy has some like more serious stuff going on with his family, a lot of responsibility he has to take on. And I was just like, how is this going to work? But in the second half, it completely sold me. I was like, these people are meant to be. Their lives actually do fit together so well. And these other elements came in that connected it to the previous book. So if you loved Part of Your World, if you loved Yours Truly and those characters, all of that gets connected back to this book in a really great way that just really brought like an emotional response out of me. So I highly recommend this book. As I said, it would be a high 4-star rating. I really did love it. Her books are so great. They're such a good combination of that heavy kind of emotional stuff, but also they're funny and lighthearted at times. The romance is great. There's these other like good relationships in it. The friendship in this one actually between our main character and her best friend was really great. Like, just awesome. So I highly recommend that. Okay, now we're down to my top 3 books of the month. We have Emily Wilde's Encyclopedia of Faeries by Heather Fawcett, a very talked about book on booktube, and I was so excited to finally get to it. I give it 4 stars. I really did enjoy it. In case you don't know, this is about obviously Emily Wilde. She is like a scientist, or like she's studying, I think it's called a dryadologist, where she like studies fairies and fae. Obviously it takes place in a fantasy world, but it's kind of described as like cozy or lighter fantasy. It takes place in 1909, so a bit more historical. Emily has gone to this small town, I think in like Sweden or something like that. She is investigating the fairies that are native to this town. Emily is one of those characters that like is very focused on her studies. She has trouble kind of understanding people and understanding their emotions and getting along with people, just because she's kind of described as like cold a little bit. So it was really beautiful kind of seeing her bond with the people in this small town and grow to care about them as she helps them kind of navigate the fae who are kind of terrorizing this town. It's written in a cool way where it is like Emily's journal. Like she's writing to us like in a journal of her research. And of course there is a romantic element too. She has this research partner, Wendell Bamblebee, who she kind of has like a love-hate relationship with. They definitely have some banter and stuff going on. He ends up showing up and helping her, and it kind of seems like he might be a fairy. Like she kind of suspects him of being a fairy at the beginning. It was just such a fun journey. If you like books that have like quests, if you like traditional fairy stuff, like this is not a Sarah J Maas type of fairy situation, which I don't like what she has done with fairies. Like this is very much bringing back to like the original lore of fairies, and I really appreciated that. I look forward to continuing the series. Unfortunately, I think I've heard people don't like the second one as much, but I'm still excited to read it, and I overall just had a very great time with this. Then I read Furyborn by Claire Legrand. This is the first book in the Imperium trilogy. It is a young adult fantasy book, although I would say it's a little bit of an older young adult actually, but I'm pretty sure it's YA on Goodreads, but it definitely does have some more mature themes and stuff like that, so don't get scared away by the young adult category. This was really good. I really had a good time with this. I gave it 4.5 stars. This is following 2 different women, 2 queens, and their timelines are like 1,000 years apart. So when one of them, we're following Rael, I think her name was, and she has always had this immense power, because in this world there's like, you can have different elemental type of powers, right? But she has all of them. There is this prophecy that there's going to be a sun queen that like saves the world, and there's going to be a blood queen that like destroys the world. And so we're kind of finding out like which one is she, or we kind of do know which is which from the start, but I won't spoil that for you. So we're having these flashbacks of what she went through 1,000 years ago, and then we're having kind of more the present day with, what was her name, Eliana? Was that the other girl's name? Yeah, and you know, she's gonna be the other queen, and we're seeing her life and how now there's not really any magic in the world anymore. She is kind of an assassin for hire type of situation. When her mom gets kidnapped, she ends up going on this kind of quest to find her mom, and there's this like empire. Yeah, there's this empire that is like taken over, so she's gonna help like take down the empire. And so yeah, there's wars going on, there's magical powers. I really found this world very interesting, very compelling. Rael in the past also has to do this kind of magical competition, if you like that. If you like elemental magic kind of thing, there's some angels, I'll say. It's just very epic, and I really enjoyed the characters. I thought there was a lot of like fun moments too. There's a lot of action. There's some steamy moments too. That's what I kind of meant. Like there is some mature stuff going on too, and I just feel like people don't talk about this book enough. It did come out, I guess, a little while ago. I think it was 2018, but this is definitely underrated. Like I really enjoyed this, and I am very much looking forward to continuing the series, and I would recommend. And then my favorite book of the month would have to be Funny Story by Emily Henry, of course, her newest romance book. I absolutely loved it. I give it 4.5 stars. Should I have given it a 5? I don't know. Something always holds me back from rating romances 5 stars, but I just adored this. Of course, we're following Daphne and Miles, I believe their names were, and both of them are in like long-term relationships, and then both of their partners leave them for each other, which leaves these two in a very weird situation. They end up moving in together because they don't really have any other options, and they decide to kind of start fake dating to make their exes jealous. We have the forced proximity trope of them being roommates, and it's really like a friendship to lover her story. Like, you really see such a focus on the development of their friendship and their relationship, and it was so good. Like, I cared about these characters so much. They had such great chemistry and tension. As always with all of her books, we also had those other themes going on with like friendship and family stuff both of these characters are dealing with. Daphne kind of trying to figure out what she's doing with her life, where does she want to live, what's she doing with her career. She's a librarian, so it has that cozy reader vibes for all of us readers. And Miles is just a great hero. He's so nice, he's so lovely, and just, I feel like it's one of her best books. I'll have to one day like reread all of her books, but I feel like this is one for the people who love beach read, just classic Emily Henry. And I think she's really developing her craft even more. Like, I kind of see her books getting better and better. Absolutely recommend this for anyone new to romance, anyone who is a big romance reader. It's just great. So those are the 8 books I read this month. Definitely leave me a comment down below if you have thoughts on any of these. Subscribe and follow me on Goodreads and Storygraph to see my reading updates in between videos. Thank you guys so much for watching. I hope you have a great June, and I'll catch you in my next video. Bye!